There we are. Hello, my friends, and welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm glad to see you here. My name is Gavin Syme. And you know, if you are new to this channel, like and subscribe. And if you are new to this channel, you might think, who is this man? Is he Russian? Because if he is, he has the worst Russian accent in all of history. But if you are not new to this channel, you know that I am not Russian. However, I do know a Russian man down here in Mexico. He's very nice. He's always very friendly. He kisses me on the cheek, which is, well, it is different. But, see, what can I say? Very well. You are all here. Like and share and subscribe because tonight is the moment. Hello, everyone. Robert, Eliot, Buttermilk, David, all of you, Monk. Very well, everyone is here. We will do the live stream now. Bandit, I see you. Hey, Zard. Well, see. Very good. We are together. Comrades, today is the day, my comrades. Today is the day to talk about socialism. That is right. Socialism. Justice and equality for all mankind. And free crap too, which is very good. Very good free crap. Today we talk about socialism, justice and equality for all mankind as long as I am in charge of it. This is socialism for you. All right, I'm switching back out of my horrible, hello everyone, my horrible Russian accent. I just wanted to give you a moment to get in there. The reason I have a theme tonight, though, and it is socialism, is because we have a situation, it's developing right now in the USA as 1,500 refugees are marching across Mexico, having walked across the border without permission, and are heading to the USA. And of course, all of the world, right, all the patriot world is wetting their pants because that many immigrants is an invasion. Idiots. All right, so what's really happening and why the theme of socialism? Because we're going to talk about actual socialism. We're going to talk about how the USA is a socialist country tonight. I'm going to drop some fact bombs on you guys so that you can go out and spread them to all these so-called constitution-loving, freedom-loving patriots who are out there shaking the hands of the enemy and worshiping blue ISIS and saying they have to save us from the terrible immigrant. It's absurd. Here's the reality. Now, I've talked about this a lot. I'm not going to go too deep into it other than to say this. The Constitution grants the government no authority over immigration whatsoever, and immigration restriction is specifically forbidden under the articles that preserve the right, not grant the right, preserve the right to travel, and under Amendments 9 and 10, which restrict the federal government from taking part in anything that is not specifically enumerated in the Constitution, which immigration is not. This is why the Founding Fathers neither made any restrictions on immigration in the first Congress. They, in fact, made the Naturalization Act, which had only to do with becoming a citizen years after immigrating. But when they were debating and discussing the idea, the concept of restricting immigrations, thank you, White Mage, appreciate your guys' shout outs in there and the super chat supporting the channel. The concept of restricting immigration was not even a consideration. In fact, these concepts of immigrants are ruining everything and we have to stop them and we have to build a wall, this is all new. I mean new as in the past couple decades. In the USA, they didn't even start touching the idea of immigration restriction until after the Civil War because it was illegal to do so. The government did not have that power. Anyone could walk in and say, hey, I'm going to work. I'm going to live here now. I'm going to take this piece of land out of nature. The idea that our country is our front door and it's all our private property and therefore we can abuse anyone that comes in did not exist, nor does it exist in law. So what is happening with all of these people, right? Trump's tweeting out and saying how Mexico's making a mockery of our immigration laws and they laugh at our immigration laws. Of course they laugh at our immigration laws because they are immigration lawlessness. And so as the patriot community, I'm literally getting messages, guys, from so-called 3%ers, okay? These are people who claim they're defending the Constitution. If they were actually defending the Constitution, if you actually had 3% in militia, they would be stopping men like Obama, men like Trump. Conflicts, thanks. They would be stopping the immigration abuses, the prison abuses. They would be stopping blue ISIS. Okay, they would be resisting and standing up. Instead, they're shaking their hands and saying, we back the police. These are not 3%ers. You're not a patriot and a 3%er if you say, hey, let's go down to the border and abuse and rob innocent families and women and children who have hurt no one because they don't possess a magic piece of paper that's actually not required at all under the law, but we've made up rules so that we can use fear-mongering to control people and build walls and lock everyone in their districts. I'm going to pause to let that sink in. Pause over. All right, so what's happening? Well, about a week and a half ago, before any of you guys were hearing about it in the United States, we were hearing about it down here, and about 13 to 1,500 refugees from Guatemala and further south of Mexico crossed the border. Now, it's not a secret that sometimes the Mexican immigration officials will abuse the people from further south more than they would from us coming from the north, right? But the abuses of immigration here are nothing like the abuses of immigration in the U.S. because in the U.S., the so-called patriots support the immigration abuses. Here, when people are taken advantage of by immigration officials, people are ashamed of it. Society is not completely brainwashed by propaganda in Mexico to think, oh, immigrants are the enemy. In fact, as these 1,500 immigrants come to the border from Guatemala where there is no wall. That's another thing that's made up from people who learn their history from patriot memes on Facebook. There's no wall on the Guatemala and Mexico border. Thanks, Monk. Okay, so these 1,500 or so immigrants, these refugees, they come across, right? And they're getting some help from some of these organizations that help refugees, like Sin Fronteras and things like that. These are known organizations down here. And I'm letting people in the U.S. know, I'm like, here, these immigrants are coming across. A lot of these people want to go to the U.S., probably because they believe what we tell them about it. They don't actually know it's a fascist nation. And I'm hoping many of them just decide to stay here when they see how hateful the USA is towards them. But they still have a right to enter the U.S. unimpeded. All right? Jesus, thank you. So they come to the border at Guatemala. And they just walk in. No one stops them. And there's the news there, because there's a lot of people coming up to the border, right? And they're coming together. They're saying, we need to work together. We need to stay as a unit so we can protect each other and not be abused, okay? The border guard says to the news, as these 1,500 people are walking across, I think it's time for a Coke break. And off she goes. And so they come in, and rightly so, because they have a right to travel freely. They're harming no one. And so these people are hitchhiking and walking and taking their families across Mexico, and they're actually almost to the U.S. border now, I believe. And I told people at home, I said, you watch. Jimbo, thanks so much, man. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. You watch. Wow, Jimbo, thanks. I tell people at home, you watch as they get there. The patriot community will be sending out emails and posting things, and they'll be saying, these are Muslim organizations backing the refugees. These are terrorist groups. This is backed by George Soros. This is backed by this. This is backed by that. In reality, this is just a group of refugees coming south. Are there good people there? Sure. Are there families there? Sure. Are there bad people there? I don't know. Maybe. They're probably... I was actually kind of hoping I'd get to meet some of them on the way up, but they've been making a lot of ground traveling through Mexico. And so as Trump carries on the internet, and as all the patriot communities are like, oh, we got to stop these, we're being an invasion, I'm like, wait a minute. Let's talk about socialism. Let's talk about immigration. So where am I going? I started this off with the Russian socialism, right? Maybe when people think of Russia in the old days, they think of communism. There's not a lot of difference. Communism is kind of a more extreme form of socialism, all right? So what's really happening? What do people tell me? I bring socialism up because whenever I actually defend the rights of the immigrant, people are like, oh, you're a leftist socialist, blah, 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 because they never have facts, guys. When we talk about immigration restrictions, I bring up the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, the history, the fact that no immigration restrictions existed when this country was founded, and for the next, 90 years or so. And even then they were minimal, and this happened because immigration restrictions are against the law. You can't tell someone you don't have a right to travel on the public road. You can't say all the public land that's for public use in our country is our private land and we choose to close the door. And so what's happening is, as I present legal, moral, and constitutional and natural law arguments, these so-called patriots are realizing that all their hate and rhetoric, they have no case for. And so what they fall back on is Gavin's a socialist. Gavin just supports socialism and then coming up here and freeloading. I got news for you guys. The Latin Americans are not the freeloaders. They work way harder than the USA does. Now here's the thing. You got a guy and he comes up, right? Thanks, Simon. You got a guy and he comes up with his family and he's poor and there's a social program to help him. Of course, he's probably going to accept that, all right? He shouldn't even have to sign up for a social program because you, the patriots, should be at the gate to meet him, helping his family to integrate and to find peace. That's your job as a Christian, as a patriot, as just a good neighbor, all right? But what's the agenda of the globalist elite? It's not actually to open all the borders. They're using reverse psychology on you. The agenda is to keep the borders closed, to keep every neighbor hating each other, to keep you locked into districts. That's why there's exit stations to leave the USA. That's why they want to build a wall. It's going to be the new Berlin Wall. It's not going to be to keep bad guys out, because guess what? The bad guys can get a ladder. But you trying to escape with your family from the fascism of the USA, well, you may not get a ladder so easily, and you certainly won't get all your stuff over it. So what's the real deal with socialism? Well, socialism sounds good to a lot of people. It's something that the youth tends to take up. They see the corruption and the greed and the abuse, and they would say, well, socialism means equality. In a perfect world where everyone was kind and considerate, there would be an element of socialism, but it would be voluntary socialism. Socialism, when we talk about it from a political perspective, is a socialism of force. It says, you give us your stuff, we're in charge of it, and then we'll distribute it to those who are the most deserving. See, it's not actually even really socialism, it's socio-fascism. And that's what the so-called patriots and freedom, constitution-loving, blue-backing bros in the USA are actually supporting. And unfortunately, most of them don't even realize it. Thank you, Keith. What does it mean? What it means when you hear all these people saying the Americans are coming, the immigrants are coming, and they're going to take all our programs. What people are really saying is, we're a socialist country filled with illegal programs, but we don't actually want to stand up and defend liberty and the rule of law and the Constitution and stop the illegal programs. No, we want to have them for ourselves. We don't want the immigrant getting any of our free crap. That's what these so-called patriots are really saying. Because if they were really defending freedom, they would not be saying it's the immigrant's fault. The immigrant is hurting them not at all. They would be turning to their government, who is robbing them blind, stealing most of the money and redistributing a little bit of it to those who play the game. They will be turning to those socio-fascists and saying, we will stop you. Your treason, your terror of our people, your murder of our families on the streets, and your stealing of our property ends now. If we had real patriots, 3%ers, and freedom lovers, that is what it would look like. And so as they call people like me for defending people's rights a socialist, the reality is I'm anything but a socialist. I want the community to come together voluntarily to help the immigrant. Instead, we have so-called patriot and 3% groups showing up, heading down to the border right now to make it as hard as they can to abuse these poor refugees as much as they can get away with, to promote hate, division, and abuse of human rights. These aren't patriots. they're traitors. If you support immigrants being stolen from their families off the street, their stuff taken away, and them being ejected from the country in shame because they don't have a piece of paper, you have no idea what it means to be free or to be a patriot. And because I support the rights of immigrants does not mean that I'm a socialist, but because you support the immigrant being abused so that you can maintain your freebies and social programs for yourself means you are a socialist, and you need to stop and start loving your neighbor as yourself. I literally got an email from a so-called 3%er in the USA saying, can you get eyes on this immigrant invasion that's headed to the USA? And I laid into him. I said, you are not a 3%er. You trample the Constitution, you trample the principles of freedom, and you abuse your fellow man. Immigrants are not an invasion. And I'm seeing arguments. I'm seeing these absurd arguments because when I present the facts, all they do is call me names. Because what's happening is these so-called patriot groups, they try and go look in history and they realize that everything I'm telling you is true. They realize that there is no basis for the immigration abuses. They realize that all those came about recently when they actually look at it. But their confirmation bias is so deep. The propaganda of the global elite is so rooted in them that they cannot admit they were wrong, so they just have to keep excusing themselves by saying things like, 1,500 immigrants is not immigration, that's an invasion. And let me tell you what, they're full of it. And here's why. An invasion is someone coming in to take from you by force, to harm you. And you do have a right to stop someone who is coming to take from you by force. A poor person traveling freely to come live in another place is not an invader, and you have no right to stop them, to question them, or to detain them. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. That is a created term by the political elite to control you. Because if they can make you believe that the immigrants are terrorists and that all these rules have to be made in place and that the checkpoints are for your safety and the restrictions and the walls and the borders are for your safety, they already know that you're a slave. And that is why the USA no longer has freedom, because we've fallen for the slavery. You see, the socialists, socio-fascists, as I call them, they're not actually patriots. The people promoting deportations and walls and abuses, they're actually the socialists. They're actually the ones who are angry because the programs that they want to be getting, or their friends or their neighbors or cousins or kids are getting, they don't want to have to give up any of those freebies. When they should be turning to government and saying, no, you're done taking our money, we will look out for our own communities and work together with the immigrants. They instead refuse to acknowledge the treason and the invasion that has taken over their government in the people they are voting for, and they turn to the most poor and beaten down and broken people who need help the most and say, look, an invader. That's not only evil, it's mentally insane. The person that is saying that a poor immigrant is therefore an invader has a mental problem. Now, if you need some examples, you don't even have to go back that far. While there shouldn't be any immigration restrictions, the fact is there were a few, but they ramped up drastically around the time of the drug war. Now, if you go back to the early 1900s to Ellis Island, New York, people did still have to come in and go through a little bit of a rigmarole, but it wasn't like there was lotteries and things like that. In fact, here's one for the invasion folks. And I believe it was April 12th, 1907, 1,200 people immigrated in Ellis Island, New York alone. And guess what? All the New Yorkers were not taking to the streets with torches and pitchforks and screaming, it's an invasion, because it's not. Supporting the rights of the immigrant is not socialism. I don't support the redistribution of wealth at the point of a gun. I support us loving our neighbor, acting like Jesus, acting like patriots, actually reading our Constitution and the law, and not being so brainwashed and ignorant that you think that the rights enumerated in the Constitution, those are only for citizens. You see, the so-called patriot says, it's ridiculous that I have to be documented and numbered and papered. And then the first thing they do is turn to the immigrant and say, they should be imprisoned and robbed and molested and tortured and deported if they're not papered. The hypocrisy of the USA is why the USA is gone, why it's going to ash, and why there is no freedom left. That, you guys, is the truth about socialism. It's the truth about immigration, and it's the truth about the 1,500 people that need your help and respect, not government-sponsored social programs to make a life for themselves as they head across the various countries that they are moving to. Stop looking for excuses to rob and molest and hate your neighbor, and start looking for excuses to love them by speaking out against these fake patriots, these frauds that hear the truth and they're like, oh, I'm gonna unsub. I can't stand this. You're one of them socialists who doesn't want immigrants to be molested and abused. If you think this way, you are mentally ill and you need to seek help. I would recommend from a higher power, but if you don't want that, at least crack a book and study our history. Blue Ghost, thank you. All right, you guys, I'm going to go. We've gone on for 20 minutes. I hope you guys will share this, because this is the truth about socialism and the immigrants that are crossing Mexico to head to the United States. And guess what? Entire towns are welcoming this caravan of refugees here because the people here do not approve of immigration abuses, deportations, and molestations. Maybe the USA should get a clue. Learn what it means to be a patriot, study our history, and start standing up for the rule of law. All immigration restrictions and laws and abuses in the USA, and I mean everyone, all of them are bullshit. All right, you guys, peace. Stand up. Be safe.